anybody die at Mbek?
I don't remember. I'm not sure.
You see, I looked at the list that was provided by the Umbud, and I couldn't find any children dying on that list.
Okay.
But I'm informed by my learned colleagues that they're representing people that died there. That is not yet on the list.
Yeah, I'm not clear about that.
Okay, can I just walk off from Baneng now and speak to you about the ID documents? Am I correct to say that the ID documents were important to you to obtain ID documents for the mental health care users, because that will give them access ultimately into SASSA grounds?
Yes.
That was the reason that you wanted the ID numbers of each patient.
But also to know people, to identify people, because there were people who were long in the life Esidimeni and they have lost contact with their families. So it was going to make it easier to trace their families also.
How is that? How is that?
There was a team that was tasked to do that.
My question is, how will the ID number help to trace the family?
Because at least then you know the person, who is the person, then you are able to...
I don't understand that. Sorry, could you just explain that to me?
The ID number is your identity as a person. It has a surname and a name. So you are able to know where to start when you trace people.
Are you saying that there were people there as mental health care users that didn't have a name and a surname?
They have been there and they have lost contact and they didn't have IDs.
Sir, my question is, are you saying there were people without names and surnames as healthcare users in the facilities?
There were people who did not recall where they come from, who they are.
So I'm going to ask again, are you saying that there are people who didn't have names or surnames in the hospitals or in the facilities?
Councillor, I can't answer that directly because I was not involved with the nitty-gritties.
Well, I don't understand that, because one of your projects were to get ID numbers.
Yes.
So what are you saying? I'm just trying to understand. I'm not trying to be funny to you. I'm just trying to understand what you're saying.
Council, the project was a multi-project. It was a very complex project. So we had appointed technical people to deal with different aspects. So I could not be involved in all these aspects. So I can't give you a straight answer.
What I'm just trying to establish is, my question to you was, you needed an ID number to access a SASSA grant, and you said no, we needed that to get the family members.
No, I didn't say no. I said it will also assist with the identification. It needed for grant purposes and also for identification.
But you say you don't know whether any of them were unidentified, because if you look at the list of the deceased people, there are still quite a number without ID numbers.
Yes.
And they are identified.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to understand why you needed the ID numbers.
I accept that. We needed mainly because people needed to have grants.
Yes, that was my initial statement to you.
But I did not object to that.
And the reason that you wanted them to have SASSA grants is that you wanted them to pay their SASSA grants to the NGO to supplement the amount paid by the government to the NGO. Isn't that so?
That's what I said yesterday, that the SASSA grants also supplemented the funds.
So if you were to move somebody without an ID number and without a SASSA grant to an NGO, that the income of the NGO is not going to be supplemented by that person's SASSA grant. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
So if you move somebody without an ID number, without a SASSA grant, you're acting irresponsibly because you know you're causing financial problems to the NGO. Isn't that so?
If it has happened, I think it's...
No, so you were the project manager. You knew who had ID numbers. You knew who had SASSA grants. If you've moved a person without that in place, that was irresponsible. Don't you agree with me?
Council, being a project manager doesn't mean you know everything all the time. You get given information, you process information.
Okay, let me try again. You knew that this was a cost-saving exercise. So finances were important to you, isn't that so?
Yes.
And if finances were important to you, you would have known it would be important to the NGOs.
Yes.
And that would mean you would make sure that the NGOs get all the money that they needed to protect these mental health users. Isn't that so?
Yes.
So then, as your project manager, you would make sure that everybody had an ID number and a SASSA grant to make sure that they don't suffer at the NGOs. Isn't that so?
Yes.
Therefore, I put it to you, it was irresponsible to move any person without an ID number and a SASSA grant to an NGO. Do you agree with me?
Yes, if it has happened, it's irresponsible.
Thank you.
But why did it happen? You've just told us it was irresponsible, but why did you allow it to happen?
Justice, I'm not aware that it has happened. That's why I say if it has happened.
No, you gave us a schedule yesterday of categories of people, and from memory, over 500 of them had no IDs.
Yes.
And nonetheless, the contract was terminated and these people were moved. Is that correct? You've already conceded to that.
Yes, but I'm...
Now the question is, why did you not only delay in paying the NGOs, send them people with no grants? Why didn't you prevent that happening?
Chief Justice, the people who were, we had other facilities, state facilities to send them to, we should have sent them to the state facilities. Vesco-based Sterfante.
Why didn't you do that? I'm really following up on the point that you're debating with council.
Yes.
It's a logical question. You haven't done it. People were sent without grants. You told us yesterday you delayed 3 to 4 months to pay the NGOs. And really the underlying question of Advocate Krause is it was irresponsible to do that because that would threaten the lives of the patients concerned. My question inevitably is, why didn't you heed that? Why did you do something irresponsible?
My answer to that, Justice, is that I wasn't aware that they were moved to NGOs, the ones without ID, because the provision was that the people needed to, we had other facilities to move them to.
Thank you, Justice. Can I move on to the service level agreements? You are, as a project manager, or were no doubt aware that in order to receive payment, there should have been a valid service level agreement between the NGOs and the government. Is that so?
Yes.
So if a person was moved to an NGO without a valid service level agreement, then no money would have been paid over to that NGO. Is that right?
Yes.
So if you moved people to an NGO without a service level agreement, chances are that the patients would suffer because there wouldn't be money coming in. Is that so?
Yes.
So in sending patients to an NGO without a service level agreement, that would be irresponsible. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
And do you agree with me that that happened?
No?
That happened. People were sent to NGOs where there weren't signed service level agreements.
Yes, that's why I agreed that it's a mistake. Mistakes crept in, happened.
Yes, but mistakes happened because leaders don't look at things. You knew this was something to be in place, so I want to put it to you, you were irresponsible for not checking that this was in place. Do you agree with me?
As the leader of the project team, maybe, yeah. I can't say much. I can't argue against it.
Yes. And no service level agreement.
I'm sorry, I just want to get that answer on record. You said as the leader of the project, what?
Of the team.
Yes.
Yes.
You accept that you were irresponsible? Is that the answer?
As well, I've checked more to ensure that these things have happened. But
Yes. Thank you.
justice, it was a complex process. It was a lot of things, and sometimes when you look back, we could have done things better.
Now, I just want to put it to you, with no service level agreement and no SASA grant, these patients were left in a very, very difficult position. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Now, can I just understand your reasoning? You just told Justice Museneke now that looking back, you should have done things differently. Now, before the move of any patient, would you agree with me that we've already agreed that the SASA grant should have been in place? Just answer, please.
Yes.
And we agreed that the service level agreement had to be in place.
That was a requirement, yes.
And would you agree with me that there had to be a medical assessment of each patient?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that there should have been medical information available on each patient?
Yes.
Or this is all still before the move?
Yes.
Do you agree with me that the medical information on each patient, there should have been a proper handover to the NGO?
Yes.
And for that, you no doubt knew that the patient's medical file would be very necessary.
Yes.
Did you ensure that the files went to the NGOs?
The council, there was a testing that has clinicians and the mental health unit who were tasked to do that work. And I think we had dedicated doctors who were assisting us. If I remember well, there were 2 doctors who were assisting us to ensure that when they discharge patient, they have checked through the patient and they are satisfied that they could write a discharge slip. We had a problem with Life Esidimeni because they were reluctant to release the whole record, the patient record.
Okay, I'm going to get back to your answer just in a moment. You referred to 2 doctors. Who were they?
Dr. Wadala and the other was, they were part of, they were assisting us with that.
What? Could you just spell the first name, please?
Dr. Wadala.
Could you spell that?
Wadala. LA.
And the
And
second,
the other one I don't remember, but we had 2 doctors who were asked to assist.
so as the project manager, did you oversee that process?
The project team, the sub-project team on clinical services and were the ones responsible to oversee that.
I'm going to ask my question again. As project manager, did you oversee that process?
On a non-clinical basis, I did oversee it, but clinically it was overseen by clinical people.
So you would have called for a list to make sure that each patient, before it was transferred, has been seen by a doctor, and you would have checked what was said by the doctor about this patient. Is that so?
The mental health team and the clinician were the ones who were checking that, not me personally.
Did you have a list, sir, to see whether those things were done?
No, I didn't have that list, but I was assured that it's happening.
As project manager, why did you not check that that happened?
The concern, the project was running and it has different task teams. Maybe I must explain. And I was also responsible for other tasks. So I thought that one is a clinical, it needed clinical experts, and those are the ones who were assisting us on that.
So your short answer is, I didn't oversee that. Now, in your answer that I want to come back, you use an interesting word. You said there were 2 doctors discharging these patients.
Not overseeing the discharge of this patient.
That word is an interesting word because it comes back often in the papers, isn't it?
Yes.
Section 27 is called this transfers. We've called it transfers from life to the NGOs. You've heard that.
What?
We call the process a transfer or a move or a relocation.
Yes.
You've heard that.
We call it, I think we were calling it placement.
Or you can call it a placement, but
Yeah.
you've used the word discharge now.
Yeah.
Did you discharge them?
Discharge is the, okay, maybe you are now becoming technical. I think we are using it in the more lay person's ability, the way I used it, but you are becoming technical. It was a discharge because the doctors has to assess so that we are able to know the condition of the patient, whether he needs to go to the hospital or to the NGO or to where. So basically, that's when I spoke of assessment. This is what I was saying.
And you check that process, sir. Who must be discharged and who must go to other medical places? Or you're just using the word discharge as a general term now?
Yes, as a general term.
So you would agree with me that most of those patients, mental health users, wouldn't in 3 months be so healthy that they can be discharged? There wasn't a general miracle that South Africa knew about that all the mental health users just overnight became cured.
I think the premise which I think if Dr. Manamela and Tim were here will explain it better. I can't explain it better than that.
I will come back to the discharge in a while, sir. Can I just, before I move off from this point, did you see that there was a doctor to doctor or doctor to healthcare transfer of the information of each patient from where the patient was held to where the patient was moved? Was there a clinician giving over information about this patient?
Physically, I was not at the facilities all the time when people were being moved. But when I visited some of the facilities in Randfontein, I will engage with the responsible doctor, and she will tell me, and the nurses, they will tell me what they are doing and how the process is going.
Are you talking about doctors and nurses? Were there doctors and nurses at all the NGOs?
No, I mean at the facility from Life Esidimeni to move them. When we were placing people, I will go to like maybe Ramfante, and I will get a report from the doctor.
But
And
that is not the question. The question is, were you physically there to oversee the handover of medical records from Life Esidimeni, on the one hand, to NGOs who would be taking on patients?
As a individual, it would have not been possible justice because there were people tasked to do that. So I was not there physical.
And you haven't asked to check that? You haven't asked for a spreadsheet to check that that has happened?
No, I didn't ask for
Did you go to Anchor Home to see whether there were doctors and nurses?
What?
Anchor Home?
Anchor Home. No, I haven't visited Anchor Home.
And Precious Angels?
I visited only after that have occurred.
Did you see any doctors or nurses there?
No, the NGOs do not require to have doctors in the facility.
And did you check whether the patients needed medical assistance there?
What is required in the NGO is a professional nurse to oversee, and then healthcare workers, and connection with a public facility, a clinic.
But the question is, did you check whether there will be medical care available for the transferred patients?
Justice, the medical care available for patients in the NGOs, which is a practice, is that they are linked with the nearest hospital and the nearest clinic. So
No, did
if
you
there
check
are
that
problems,
in fact that was available? That is what council is asking.
it was available in terms of the linkage that was there between the clinics and but the doctors are not expected to be in the NGOs. That's not what is required.
Sir, this is perhaps not something to raise with you, but medicine, or let me start it this way. We have the health facilities being in three categories. You've got a district, you've got an institution that gives training, and you've got your ground level. You've got your district, your regional, and your facilities that give training.
Yes.
Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Now, your lowest level would be your clinics.
Community-based services will be our lowest level.
But those clinics don't have medicine that will fit which we will call psychiatric drugs. That needs to be prescribed by a psychiatric hospital. And that needs to be done beforehand. Did you know about that?
Yes.
Did you arrange that the clinics where these patients would go would have access to the correct medication?
That's why I had clinical experts in my team. They were able to do that.
Did they do it, sir?
We ensured that the first thing what we ensured is that when they are released from Life Esidimeni, they needed to have a package of treatment that they are receiving. That's why we needed doctors to oversee that.
No, the question is a very direct one. Did you ensure that the doctors actually do it? That is what you are being asked. You heard, and patients need to be transferred with medication.
Yes.
And with their prescriptions, even if they go to NGOs.
Yes.
Did you make sure or take steps to ensure that that happens? That's what question it is. Not what usually happens. Did you ensure in this case?
The project team ensured that.
Sir, can you say that under oath that happened?
It should have happened.
No, I'm not asking whether it should have happened. I say you under oath, you say the project team have done that. As project manager, can you under oath say that it did happen?
I can't say that.
Thank you. I'm going to move over now to the move itself. Who arranged the moves of these mental health care users? Who arranged the transport?
We used the EMS to assist us with transport.
Just assist me, what is EMS?
Emergency medical services, our emergency medical services were tasked to assist and support the project
Okay.
with transport.
Would you refer to those as ambulances?
Yes,
or not?
ambulances and patient transport and all the transport needs that can move patients.
Okay. Did you use any other service provider?
Some NGOs were having resources. They used their own combis to do that. Those who were having resources like combis
Any buses used?
and buses, yes.
Who paid for the buses?
The EMS buses, we used EMS buses.
Not public buses.
I'm not sure of that one.
Okay.
If it was used, it was not used by, I don't know, but I was not in every situation.
Okay, and did you use buckies?
To my knowledge, I didn't know that we used buckets. I read about it.
Why is it that you don't know that, sir?
Because it was never part of the plan.
Yes, I can understand that, because that would be totally irresponsible. But as a project manager, you know I have to move close to 2,000 patients. For 2,000 patients, I need transport, and this is how I'm going to do it. So how did you think this was going to happen?
Through the EMS, we have enough transport, ambulances, patient transport, combis, under EMS, even buses. So there was no need to think that somebody can use a van to do that.
With who did you arrange with the EMS? With who did you speak there?
The chief of EMS was tasked, was part of the project team, was tasked to do,
Just give us
to assist us.
Sorry, sir, could you give us a name, please?
Mr. Malotana.
Could you spell that for us, please?
Mr. Malotana, Malotana.
Is he part of the emergency services?
He's the head of the emergency services. So if there were problems, people will phone me and say, we have problems. I will phone Mr. Malotana and make sure that they are able to assist.
What type of problems did people phone you with, sir?
People will complain that the patients are ready, there's no transport, and then they'll phone me, and then I will request Mr. Malotana to assist.
Any other problems?
That's it.
But was there a written logistics plan? If there was, would you give us a copy of that?
For the transportation?
Yes. Was there a plan on how to move 1,700 patients?
It was not a written plan, but it was made. That's why Mr. Malotana was part of the task team to assist us with the transport logistics.
The answer is there was no written plan.
I presume that he should be having a written plan, but I haven't
No, but
seen
did
it.
you have a written plan?
No, I didn't have.
Let's go back to the question of buckies. I saw your interview with the public, with the Ombud. where open back is used?
Yes, I was informed that there were open boxes, but it was not with my knowledge.
And patients had to be tied?
Patient had to be?
Patients had to be tied, their limbs had to be tied whilst transported. Do you know about that?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
But it appears,
At that time.
it appears in the Ombuds report.
Yes,
You've heard about that?
yes, I heard about it after the
Did you
release of the...
investigate what happened and where?
After the ombudsman's report.
After the transfer, you've come to hear that there were patients in open bakkies who are mentally ill and who were tied up and driven to NGOs. Did you go back and say, I'm the project head? What happened here?
But Justice, I was not aware of that during the
I say after the
period.
incident. You say you heard it only after. Did you go back and look, and can you enlighten us? Because we see it in the Ombuds report, and we want to know from you, the man who ordered the transfer, what happened? Even if you heard it later, what are the facts?
No, I didn't go back because after everything has happened, Justice, the way things were in the department, nobody was talking to each other. You know, we were all shocked, and I think maybe we did not have even a briefing.
Would you ever have ordered
ourselves.
mentally ill patients to be transported in open bakkies
No, I would not have done that.
and tied up? Would you ever order that?
No, I would not have done that. And even if I knew, I would have intervened appropriately. But at that time, I didn't know.
Counsel?
Thank you, Justice. I'm going now to just take you through the timeline, just to make sure that I understand how this timeline works. So if you could just assist us. You were approached on the 5th of November for the first time.
Yes.
At that stage, the project was already in its being. Who was the project manager at that stage?
I don't think there was I don't think there was a named project manager. I think it was because Dr. Manamela is the head of the directorate. It was given to the directorate. So they were operating it as a directorate.
We know that already in September, the 22nd of September, Dr. Manamela signed a draft plan. So it was long before you were there. Do you agree with me?
27 September of?
22nd September of 2015, the draft plan was signed. That was before you.
Yeah, I was not part of that. Yeah.
But you say there were no project manager.
No, I say there was no named project manager. It was run under the directorate of Dr. Manamela.
Okay.
So it means Dr. Manamela was the overall head.
And on the 29th of September 2015, Life Esidimeni was given termination notice. That was also before you were approached to be a project manager.
Yes.
Then you established a team. Is that right?
Yes.
When was your team established?
The letter that I received, I did write for Dr. Silvano after clearing with him what he expects from me. I did write a list of nominees.
The question requires a date.
Yes, I
That's
just
an
want
answer.
to put the context to it.
Oh.
Justice.
Sure.
I did write the list of nominees that people who can serve in the team, and I submitted to the office of the chief director. I did receive mine it was signed on the 9th December 2015, my letter that appointed me, and then I sent it off on the 10th. So most of the people who were suggested also signed on the 10th of December.
So would it be safe to say that on the 10th of December, nearly just over a month after you were first approached, you had a team in place?
Yes.
So would it then be safe to say that at that stage you started working?
Yeah, I started my work in terms of going to the facilities to see what is that or that is needed. So I did do my visits.
Okay, we know from the Ombuds report that you went to Waverley, Randfontein and Banenge.
Yeah, alone.
Was that after the 10th of December?
Yes.
And you knew at Waverley and Randfontein you didn't get good reception at all?
No, first of all, I did my initial visit with the mental health unit. They took me to their different facilities just for me to know the situation. That was my visit, not with the executive. And I did meet the CEOs of the different facilities, and they took me around.
You say after the 10th,
Yes.
10 December 2015?
If I remember well, it was after. But I will have to check whether it
Where
was.
can you check, sir?
I don't see the paper. I don't see the document that I noted. But I did visit initially alone with the mental health unit.
Okay. Can you tell us when the volatile meetings took place at Waverley and Randfontein?
Those were after we have had our meeting with the MEC, and it was agreed that we'll have to visit the facilities.
I'm just trying to get a timeline, sir. Was it in the beginning of December? Was it in the end of December? When was these volatile meetings?
Okay. Council, can I?
If you don't know, say so.
Can I come back to you in
If you
terms
don't know,
of the
it's fine.
dates? But we did visit.
Yes, thank you.
Can I come back with the dates?
So is it safe to...
Yes, before you move, why were the meetings in Randfontein turbulent? What were the people unhappy about?
Both meetings at Waverley and Randfontein were not very good meetings. The interaction was volatile, and people were not happy of the move.
Let's start off which people.
The patient, the families, and the representatives of the families who were in those meetings, because the meetings was a sort of a mass meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
And they told you so, that they are unhappy.
They told us, or
Yes.
at
With whom were you?
At Web Valley, the first meeting we were with the MEC.
Was MEC there?
Yeah, we were
Yes.
part of the delegation with the MEC. That was a very tough meeting. I initially chatted, but she took over. It was volatile. People were angry. People were raising their concerns and their issues. I remember even the vet students were there because they were training occupational therapy students were also, because it was going to disrupt their academic thing. They did raise issues. So a lot of people raised issues. That's how, out of that meeting, we agreed that they must elect a family committee, and they did at Wafali. The same thing at Ramfontein. It was volatile. The MEC was not there at Ramfontein. It was the HOD who was chairing. I was assisting him to chair, and people were robust also, and telling us about the experience of their patients at home and all those things. They did raise issues, very difficult issues, very emotional issues. And that's where, if you read the ombudsman's report, myself and HOD had to step aside after the meeting and said, this is not really a good thing. This is not a very good thing.
And you and the HD, according to the Ombud, were of the view that cancelling the LE contract, the Life Esidimeni contract, was not the correct decision.
Yes, it was my.
After those two meetings, you were convinced it was not the correct decision.
Yes, I had. Myself as a person, I had a foreboding in terms of this project. So when we discussed, I found that the HOD also has serious misfigure. Yeah, he had also problems with that.
And you were aware, knew then, and you and the HOD talked about the fact that you did not have enough beds, isn't it? You thought you needed about 2,000 beds, isn't it? Which you did not have.
Yes, I think at the first meeting, people played around and said they will be able to get 2,000 beds. But when we had a meeting, you remember yesterday I said I attended a meeting where Dr. Manamela had called NGOs and the districts, and we looked every district where these beds are, only to find that the beds are planned. They are not there in actual sense.
And you expressed the view that you thought the MEC was misled to want to push ahead with something which was obviously opposed by the patients, by their families, by young students who were training at those facilities.
Yes.
And you thought the MEC was misled to want to go ahead with this. Is that correct?
That was my opinion, and still my opinion, that maybe if the correct details were outlined.
And at the time, it is reported that you have the view that you and the HOD rather work with Section 27, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, SADC, and the South African Society of Psychiatrists to build trust and to suspend, in order to get them to suspend the court action. That was your view, right?
That was part of the meeting that we had with Section 27 and the other stakeholders.
And you communicated your concerns to the MEC, did you? You told the MEC this plan will not work. Did you?
Yes, I did. I did communicate my views, and I did try to suggest alternative approaches to the issue. And I did highlight the concerns that families had, because regularly I was also meeting with it was my task also to meet with the family
Now, knowing
committees.
all of that
Yes.
you knew at the time,
Yes.
why didn't you go and tell somebody else other than the MEC? You used the word foreboding, a beautiful word.
Yes. Justice, on my personal,
Ka Sepedi ba re motho wa go nona.
yes,
Because you've got a discomfort that something terrible might happen.
yes, I had that discomfort. And
Right, and why?
I did raise it on my individual basis, personal basis. I did raise it in my prayer meetings and ask people to pray. I did raise it in my prayer is important for me. It's something that carries me.
Shall we
Please
give the
don't
witness
laugh
an
it.
opportunity,
Yeah.
please?
And also I did raise it in my organization, in my branch, as a branch leader. I did raise it with other fellow comrades. But
Why didn't you raise it with
what I didn't do,
somebody more senior than the MEC and say, we're getting into a disaster? Instead, you go ahead with a plan to transfer people, you go and get EMS to help you. You don't check properly whether medication has been moved on.
we talked with the
You don't
HOD.
ensure that they have grants.
Yes.
And you go ahead with a plan that was going to be very dangerous to vulnerable people.
I should have done that. I have done that on
Why
a
didn't you do it? Why
personal
didn't you tell
level.
the premier? Why didn't you tell another MEC? Why didn't you tell your comrades? I know who you mean by your comrades, but why didn't you tell them?
I did communicate with my comrades and
Comrades where?
in the branch and also in the province. I
In the
did raise
branch-
issues.
Which branch is that?
My branch.
Of the political movement of
Yes.
the African National
yes,
Congress?
Yes.
And you do tell the provincial leadership
I
of
did.
this impending disaster?
I did raise it with not in an informal basis, not formally. I think I should have raised it formally. I think that was the bit. I should have done that on a formal basis.
And after all said and done,
And also I should have raised it with the premier. I
Yes.
did not do that.
You did not do that.
Yes.
instead you forged straight ahead with a plan
And
that resulted in at least 118 deaths.
And Council, when I was meeting with the family, because we had regular meetings with the family committees, they did really lambast us, and I did advise them and appeal to them that this is democracy. Why don't you go, as a family, as you've got the right to go and knock at the door of the MEC. You've got the right to go to the premier and to the, they will be able to listen to you maybe. I did try to ask them to do that, but
Why didn't you do it?
I don't know why I didn't do that. I'm always forthright, but this time I don't know why I didn't do that.
Counsel?
Thank you, Justice. Who misled the MEC?
It was my opinion that maybe if she had full knowledge of the enormity of the situation, maybe she would have reconsidered.
Yes,
It was my opinion.
I hear your opinion, but saying somebody was misled, somebody must mislead that person. So who was the person that misled the MEC?
I was not referring to, my opinion was that she didn't get all the details, correct details.
And who was responsible to give her the correct details?
all of us, senior managers.
So are you saying you misled the MEC?
No,
I just want to understand what you mean, sir.
I have confronted the MEC several times. I can't be misleading them.
So are you saying the MEC was not misled because you gave her all the correct information?
Yeah, if you read my documents, I did highlight the concerns of people. I did provide alternatives, and I did manage to convince the HOD to also of my opinions, and he bought into my opinions.
So are you saying that the MEC was not misled because you gave her all the information?
That's why I say it was my opinion.
I'm just trying to understand what your opinion was, sir.
My opinion was that maybe he didn't get.
But didn't you give her all the information? It's an easy question, sir. Did you give her all the information?
Yeah, in my own thinking, I did.
Yes. So she couldn't have been misled. Isn't that so?
I don't know why you want me to say that, because it was an opinion at that time.
But it's no longer your opinion, is it? Because you said you gave her all the information, so she couldn't have been misled.
Yes, in the context of the bids that were said to be there, I think it was an error.
Can you just explain that, sir? I didn't hear.
Originally, when she was presented that 2,000 beds are available
Who presented her with that, sir?
by the team,
What team?
mental health unit team, only to find that when we called the NGOs, some of the beds are not actual. They still have to renovate, they still have to get extra beds to make the 2,000 beds that are needed.
Okay, but you knew that and she knew that before the en masse move took place. Do you agree?
Yes.
So there couldn't have been any misleading at that stage?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to go back to my timeline. From the 5th of November 2015, when you were approached to run this project, until the 10th of December, when your team was ready to proceed, did you attend any meetings?
Yes, I did attend to familiarize myself with the project. I did attend meetings. I did attend Dr. Manemela's clinical mental health unit meeting.
And you attended meetings with the South African Depression and Anxiety group?
That's what I call the stakeholders meetings.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that was in November 2015. And they expressed very serious views that this project can't go around.
Yes, they did.
And you were aware of that by the 10th when you put your team, 10th December 2015 when you put your team
No,
together?
I think the meeting was on the 21st December.
So there was a meeting with them on the 23rd of November 2015.
Yeah, 23rd. Yeah.
There was one again on the 7th of December 2015. Were you part of both of these meetings?
The 7th.
Yes, sir. 7 December 2015. It's 3 days before your task team was up and running according to you.
Maybe can you refer me to the page?
Yes, sure. It's on page 998 of the record, and that is, that's file 3. It will be the first page in that file, sir. Is it? Sir, it seems to me I've misled you about the doc. Are we talking about the 7th? The meeting of the 7th is on page 113, sir. Sorry, I misled you. And that's file 1.
One, 113.
113.
File 1.
You see paragraph 45.1 there. I'm merely trying to know whether you were part of that meeting. Were you part of that meeting, sir?
I'm not sure.
You don't know?
I'm not sure whether I was part of
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm not sure that I was part
You're not
of this
sure?
meeting, unless if you can refer me somewhere.
Were you aware of the, I'll move on from that if you're not aware. On the 9th of December, it's the day before your task team was up and running, there was a letter to the department that a curator ad litem should be appointed for the patients. That's 9 December 2015. Were you aware of that letter?
The letter from where?
Was it your letter? From section 27.
Yes.
That they asked that the curator ad litem be appointed for the patients.
I don't remember.
You don't remember such a letter? Did it not come to your attention?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
What would have been your attitude had you known that they wanted the curator ad litem appointed? Do you understand what the curator is?
I have a vague idea what the curator
Somebody
is.
to oversee.
Yeah, to oversee the
Yes.
project.
What would have been your attitude?
I think we did discuss it in the meeting that we had with the stakeholders.
So you were aware of it?
On the 23rd meeting, which was chaired by the HOD, they did talk about the curator as part of the settlement that they wanted.
Sorry, sir, I couldn't hear. What meeting are you saying?
I said we did discuss it as part of the settlement discussions that we had with SADC and the other team members. And
When was that, sir? When did you have that meeting? Do you know? Because their letter was on the 9th of December, 2015.
on the 23rd, I think, 23rd or
23rd.
21, yeah. We did discuss those issues.
So that was after Section 27 had already served on you the urgent application.
Yeah, and that's why we had that meeting, because Section 27, I remember it was there. Kasi from SADC was there, and all the other people.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'm just going to take you a little bit back. After the letter of the 9th of December 2015, wherein they asked whether a curator should be appointed, the department wrote a letter on the 15th of December 2015 saying they will continue to discharge patients. Again, the word discharge. Are you aware of that letter?
I'm aware that we had a discussion on that. I might not.
And did you use the term discharge again in a loose way?
The discharge, I think that they were talking of at that particular moment, which we debated with SADC, was the issue of the normal discharge when a patient is being discharged. Because it's
And
okay.
normal discharge means going home, not to another home.
Yes.
Okay. Then you, on the 22nd of December 2015, Section 27 brought the urgent application. That's right.
The court application.
Yes.
Yes.
And you said you had a meeting and you decided to settle the meeting. It was the day before the urgent application was to be in court that you settled. Is that right?
Yes, under the leadership of the HOD, we agreed with the other parties that maybe we need to work together. And we
Yes,
settled,
that,
yes.
that's very important. You were against the idea of a curator. You didn't agree to a curator at all,
Myself, personal,
or the department either, sir.
yeah, the department did not, I think they did not agree on the curator.
Can I ask you, what did you understand about the settlement? What did it mean?
For me, it meant that we must work together with the stakeholders, hold meetings and agree on the processes and on what needs to be done, and then all the way work together
Yes. So as a
for the sake of the patients.
absolutely, sir. So as a responsible leader, you realize here are some expertise for a lot of people, and they can assist to take this feeling away that something is going to go wrong. No doubt that happened in your mind.
Yes.
So you were probably eager to engage with them.
Yes, I was engaging with them.
No, sir. My question is, were you eager to engage with them?
Yes.
And did you engage with them on a daily basis?
As a department, we did engage with them.
My question to you, sir, is did you engage with them on a daily basis?
Me, individual.
Yes, to get expertise.
Yes, I was engaging with them we had an agreement to have regular meetings to share information and to do
So
work together.
I'm going to repeat my question. I'm not sure whether you understand my question. My question is, did you engage with them on a daily basis, yes or no?
Not on a daily basis.
On what frequency were your meetings?
Hello?
How often did you have the meetings, sir?
It was a regular meetings, but it was not scheduled meetings.
Okay, so I understand that,
Yeah.
but what I understand under regular and what you understand might differ, so I need to know, what does regular meetings mean?
When they needed to meet with us, we met.
When they ask for a meeting, you oblige. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and
Okay.
even if we wanted to meet, we would have asked them to come together.
What did you need them for meetings for, sir?
What we did was to give them feedback in terms of what is being done and where is the progress, and they will raise issues of concerns and
Yes.
will explain the issues and will debate some of the issues
Okay,
that
so
they did not agree with.
let's just differentiate between the processes. You said you will meet whenever they wanted to meet. I'm trying to establish, when did you want to meet, and did you arrange meetings? Did you call for meetings with them to tap into their expertise?
The stakeholders meetings was under the ambit of the HOD. So I was just a supportive in terms of that as a project manager.
You were what, sir? Sorry?
Supportive to the HOD because
Were you part of
the
those?
chairperson of the stakeholders meeting was the HOD.
Okay. So were you part of those meetings
Yes.
with the stakeholders?
Yes, to provide support and also to
How
to
often were
brief, yeah,
How often?
whenever the meetings were called.
When, sir?
Yeah?
How often? Let us take it, the urgent application was on the 22nd of December 2015. You said to the court yesterday your process started in urgent in January 2016. Were you any meetings between 22nd December and January?
There should have been meetings, concern. There should have been meetings. The minutes will reflect that.
Okay, so I'm aware of 3 meetings, one on the 6th of January 2016, one on the 20th of January 2016, and one on the 9th of February 2016. Is that not so?
Yes?
Were there other meetings after that?
No, there were no meetings after that. I think there was tensions and disagreement. And
You realize that you're not come to a settlement with them?
I think it's them who pulled out.
Sorry?
I think it's them who pulled out because we did not.
You're saying it was they that did not want to engage anymore?
Yes.
So you understood, if I can just recap, you understood the settlement agreement is that you will engage them,
And we will work together.
And
with
that you would work together?
Yes.
Did you understand it that you won't move patients where they would become to harm? Or did you not think that was part of it?
That was the assurance.
You gave them that assurance. You will make sure that the patients aren't moved to a place where they're getting less treatment.
Yes, but the misunderstanding came to the word discharge.
We'll get to that, sir. So in your mind, you've undertaken, I will engage these guys, I will try to accommodate them, and I won't harm the patients. Is that a good summary of how you understood
As Gauteng Health Department, yes.
But you understood it that way? Very well. Now, you, on the 10th of March, you said you're going to move 50 patients, 10th of March 2016, to Takalani. Is that right? Remember that letter?
Written by me?
By the department, sir.
Okay.
But you, the project manager, you should have known about that probably.
Yeah, you can refer me to that later.
I'll refer you to the letter that was written by the Depression and Anxiety Group. It's on page 1017. And that will be in file 5, as I have it.
File 5. The number again?
1017, sir.
Is it 5? No?
Volume, file 5, yes.
4.
5.
I've got 5. Is that with?
Oh, you, is it 5?
Is it not 5?
Mine has it file 5. And
Of course, while you're looking like that, at some point, Council, you'll have to indicate to me where this detail is taking us to.
I'm very nearly close to that detail to explain to you where
To
the
where we're
detail.
going to.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
we need to get to the substantive questions through cross-examination, but we must check whether the detail actually gets us there.
It's file 3, sir.
Hello?
It's page 1017 in file 3.
File
3.
File 3.
Thank you.
One zero seven.
1017.
1017. Okay.
Now, the department was going to move 50 patients to Takalani. And on the 10th of March 2016, the Depression and Anxiety Group said you can't move them because there are going to be considerable, imminent, and irreparable harm. Remember that?
This letter was not.
You didn't know about that letter?
Yeah, it had gone to, I think it was Life Esidimeni Executive. It was Life Esidimeni Executive. It was written to Life Esidimeni.
So were you aware of that letter saying you can't move these guys to Takalani? It's going to be problematic.
I didn't read that
Okay.
letter. Yeah.
Now, the very next day, Section 27 said to you guys, don't move these patients because we're going back to court. Did you get that letter?
Which letter?
Were you aware that Section 27 was saying we're going back to court if you move the 50 patients?
I was aware that there was a debate between Section 27 and mental health in
Yes.
terms of what discharge is. And
So we'll
yes.
get to that.
Yes.
Well, you know there were people going to be moved to Takalani. The day after that, you served with a notice of motion to say you're in contempt of the agreement. Remember that? On the 12th of March 2016.
I don't remember it, but
Yes.
I've got a vague idea. Yes.
Now, on the 13th of March, you were in court, and then you raised the issue of these patients are not going to be moved, they're going to be discharged. So we can't be in contempt of the court order. Remember that?
Yes, I remember that we were in,
Yeah.
in
Would
court.
you say that's discharge, moving 50 people from one place to another?
It was more of placement, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
And that was part of the agreement. You can't move people if there's a problem with that. You probably have told your attorneys, no, let's engage these people. We're doing wrong here. Did you not do that? So you knew there's a problem coming. You knew it all along. You've said it already a month before. Now there's a court action. You're now before a judge of the High Court. Did you stand up and say, this is a problem?
I was not a participant. There were people who were.
You didn't sign an affidavit?
I say I was not. I did go to the court, but we were represented by our clinical people.
Yes, but you, the project leader, you knew here's problems coming. Isn't that so? Now you say, no, we're not moving them, we're not placing them, we're discharging them. So therefore, our previous agreement is not of any value here. Is that not what your papers say?
I'm not sure.
No. Now, 2 days later, on the 15th of March 2016, Judge Valley gives a judgment. And he says, yes, maybe you guys are right, maybe you don't, you thought that you discharging them and not moving them. But he says, be careful. You're placing adults with the children. And there might be problems of overcrowding. Remember that the judge said that?
I don't remember.
You didn't read the judgment? Did you read the judgment, sir?
I did read a lot of papers. I don't remember in so many words.
You can't remember whether you read the judgment? You're shaking your head, I can't hear you?
I don't remember.
You can't remember reading the judgment?
I can't.
I want to put it to you as a responsible project manager, you would have read the judgment to make sure what the judge says in there. Don't you agree with me, thinking back now who you are?
Yes.
Yes. So now the first death occurred on barely a week after the judge's judgment on the 23rd of March 2016, according to the Ombuds report. You weren't aware of that death. Is that not so?
At that time?
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't aware.
According to you, you only became aware of this in July, August 2016. Is that so? So from March to July, August, you didn't know that people were dying in your project?
You see, Council, ill people die, and it's attended to, it's reported to. Mental health unit has a a process of reporting the deaths and investigating and all those things. So it did not raise, for me, I wasn't aware because as a health department, people die all the time. Sick people die. Sick people die. And I think the issue, when I became aware of a lot of people dying, that became a concern for me.
Yes, but in the department's view, these were healthy people because they were discharged. They were not sick people. Isn't that so?
They were stable people, they were not healthy people.
So, bearing in mind that to put a lot of people in an NGO could harm the others in that facility, despite Judge Valley's warning, you still went ahead and did that, didn't you? Placed a lot of people in NGOs where there was a lot of overcrowding.
Yeah, we should have avoided overcrowding. I agree on that.
Now, when you move these people in mass, were you discharging them or were you relocating them?
That's why I say there's an issue of the...
Now, I'm asking you, sir. When you people were in mass taken from Life Esidimeni, Waverley, it was emptied on the 31st of May, 2016.
They were being, in my definition, they were being placed.
Yes, they weren't being discharged. Isn't that so?
Yes.
So your agreement with Section 27, the December agreement, should have kicked in, shouldn't it?
Yes. If
In your mind, you thought that it was part of the agreement that I wouldn't do anything to harm these patients.
Yes, it's very technical.
No, it's not technical, sir. You've already said I was placing them. It was in terms of the agreement. But you renegade on that agreement in its totality. Isn't that so?
I can't agree with that.
You knew these people were not being discharged. The guys in Waverley, Life Esidimeni. Is that true? In the 31st of May 2016, when you emptied out that whole place, you knew they were not discharged.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that in technical terms, discharge is discharge from hospital
No, but I'm
to
talking
other,
about you,
to
sir.
other facilities.
You knew that these guys weren't discharged. They weren't healthy. And in your mind, your agreement with Section 27 was in place. You weren't going to place these guys in a worse position.
They were stable. They were chronic patients, stable, stabilized, and they were having regular medications.
Sir, you knew when you sent these people, when you closed Waverley, this wasn't discharging. You already agreed to that now.
Well, Advocate Krauser, you'll have to put it to him, and he must respond to that.
Court, please.
Ask him 4 times about it. Won't quite change much. I think you have to put to him the proposition once you've laid a basis, so that we can move on.
Thank you, Justice.
And it must be kept in mind, the state has conceded that their conduct was unlawful, was negligent, and was not consistent with the standards that were required here. So let's deal with the detail, keeping that in mind, that there is this overarching concession. So
Yes.
the detail should get us to, in a way that actually gets us closer, ultimately, to equitable redress.
Court, please.
Very well.
Sir, I'm asking you these questions because I want to make sure this type of thing never happens again, that the courts are being misled and that the courts can't protect clients. So what I'm putting to you is that you came with an understanding of what your agreement was in December 2015 with Section 27. But in March 2016, you didn't have any regard to that agreement with Section 27. Do you agree with me?
Personally, I did have regard.
Okay. I put it to you further, sir, that you wouldn't have moved all of these patients if you had regard to that agreement. Do you want to answer? So I see I'm not getting...
I valued the contribution of SADC and Section 27, and I would have liked us to continue. They
You
would
valued
have,
it?
They would have helped us a lot.
Yes. So you say you valued it. How did you show that you valued it?
I was engaging with them.
In May 2016, when you moved all these patients, you were engaging with them? Is that what you're telling this commission?
I don't know how to answer that.
The answer is no, sir. You didn't value them. You didn't engage them. It's an easy answer. Let us move on. According to, and I'm very nearly finished now. I'm just wrapping up on this. According to you, by 30 June 2016, you've done all the moves of all the patients. Did I understand you correctly?
That was the timeline, because anyway, the facilities were going to be closed.
Yes. So can we accept that there were nobody moved after 30 June 2016?
That was the deadline. So if people remained, it was very few people, but the deadline was that at the end of 30 June, the companies were closing their doors. And people were...
No, but the question is direct. Let's try and save time also.
Yes.
They're asking you whether any people moved after 30th of June. Answer could be yes or no.
Most of the people were moved at the end of June.
No, whether any people moved after the end of June.
I'm not clear, Judge, whether all the people were moved at the end of June, but the plan was that by the end of June there will be no patients in the facilities, unless if there were issues that had to be attended to.
So would it be safe to say, in your mind, all the patients were moved by the 30th of June? You weren't aware of anybody left?
They should have been moved. Yeah,
In your mind, sir?
Yeah, I was
Just a yes or no? Yes. In your mind, everybody was moved.
Was supposed to be moved.
Okay. So you were wanting to look after these patients that you've now moved in the NGOs by 30 June 2016. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I just want to take you through some of the service agreements. The Bofelong service agreement. You're aware of that service agreement?
Yeah.
Bofelong.
Bopulo?
Yes.
No, I'm not.
Did you move patients to them?
Bopulo, where is Bopulo? I haven't visited that NGO.
Okay.
I visited yesterday. I said Bopulo. It was Chepon that I visited.
Okay.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the service levels agreement, sir. According to the papers supplied by us, that service level agreement was signed on the 4th of July 2017 by them, and on the 30th of August 2016 by the department. So it's fair to say that people moved there would have been without any payment until after 30 August 2016. Would that be fair?
I'm not sure. I can't answer that one.
Let's accept, sir, that the last date on the service level agreement, when it was signed by your department, was the 30th of August 2016. If we accept that, is it fair to say they wouldn't have received any subsidies before that date?
I'm not aware of the situation, but technically it's true. If they were moved, the service level was agreed on the 30th of August. I'm not so aware of that.
If we move to Cullinan, that was only signed on the 11th of July 2016. So when you move the patients there, we must accept there was no service level agreement in place and no subsidies in place. Do you agree?
There were problems in Cullinan. There were problems in terms of the NGOs that were part of the Cullinan agreement. So there were particular problems. So those issues will arise.
So Santa Tsepong, that was also one of the NGOs that you used.
Tsepong,
Yes.
next to Kalafu.
That service level agreement was only co-signed on the 16th of August,
Yes.
2016. So we can be sure that for nearly 2 months at the least, there were no money coming to them. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Well,
And-
the question that begs an answer is why did you do this? Why do you move people to an NGO with no proper service level agreements and with no resources? Why did you do this?
As I said yesterday, it was the enormity of the task. Mistakes crept in. And I can't explain the mistakes.
You can't call
And
these
I can't-
mistakes. The law
can't
has
justify.
requirements which we heard of yesterday.
Yes.
And in any case, you need a service level agreement, and you need resources
Yes.
in order to place people, to use your language.
Yes.
But why do you do this in circumstances that will endanger the lives of these vulnerable patients? Why did you people do that? Why did you, as head of project leader, why did the department do it? Why did its HOD do it? And why did the MEC do it? Maybe you can't speak for them. Can you speak for yourself?
Yes, for myself, I think our plans were not tight enough.
What do you think was the most common cause for these deaths? Did you come to know of that afterwards?
The first, there were factors that contributed to that.
No, I'm asking what
Yeah.
did
One
you
fac-
find out to be the most common causes of death?
I think the patients were, most of them had comorbidities.
Had
And,
what?
comorbidities. There was not only psychiatric patients, some of them had diabetes, hypertension, other chronic diseases. So they needed to be taken care of in terms of food. They needed to be looked after by people familiar with them, which we did not provide because they were in a complete new environment. And also, it was a winter season. They needed clothes. And if you move people to the areas where they don't have the resources, it was going to be difficult for them. So all these factors, I think, exacerbated their condition.
And knowing all that, the inevitable question again is, why did you place the lives of these patients at risk? If you're diabetic and there's no food, you're going to?
To have problems, yes.
No, not problems. What's going to happen to you? If you're diabetic and you have no adequate food, what's going to happen to you?
You are going to be sick. You are going to be sick, and eventually you might die.
So why did you do this? I'm going back to this question that worries me most. That emerges from all this detail.
Council, we should have done better. We would have avoided all these things, these questions.
Yeah, the question is, why didn't you do better?
I did raise
You know,
issues.
you were warned by a variety of entities, by specialists. I'm repeating myself like a gramophone now.
Yes, I know, Council.
Like you're warned by specialists, you're warned by lawyers concerned with access to health care. You were warned by family members, the patients themselves. You told us so this morning. You went to Waverley, you went to Randfontein. You thought your MEC is misled. In all of that, you push ahead. And to your knowledge, also during winter.
Yes.
And people inevitably die. So the question must be, why did you choose this careless option, this heartless option, rather than the cautious one, which every public official ought to choose, but to Bailey? Why didn't you choose that option?
Justice, I will always say that I should have been much more stronger in my contention against this thing. Maybe I should have pulled out, but it did come to my mind that maybe I should pull out when I saw those kids and the conditions people were in. But I thought I will be able to contribute and make a difference, and I regret that it ended up the way it has ended up. I tried my best, but it was not the best because people died.
You see, the Ombudsman says he was deeply saddened that most of you were visibly scared of your leaders. I'm sorry, I'll repeat the question. I'm sorry. Thank you, Recorder. The Ombudsman came here and told us that he was saddened by the fact that state officials who are paid to do their work were visibly scared of the people they reported to. Were you scared?
Myself, I did tell also the Ombudsman that I was not scared, but the conditions that we worked under. Maybe I will raise it when I close the remarks, that maybe Department of Health must be run by people who know health. It would have been far better.
We'll give you an opportunity to make your closing remark, but I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Please complete.
Because in my years in the department, I've worked under people who are health conscious. You can be able to reach them, but it was difficult to reach the MEC because maybe because we are trained differently, I don't know. But
Maybe because she was?
Trained differently. I'm from the health training. So that's why I say maybe that was the demarcation.
Were you afraid to tell her that she was wrong and you thought you were right?
As a president, I did raise issues, and I did raise issues even in the meeting. But you see, Judge, when you are in these meetings and everybody's head is down, and you are the only one on a confrontational basis with your senior,
Why
it becomes
are their
very
heads
difficult.
down?
Yeah?
Do you know why everybody's head is down?
Maybe they were afraid. or I don't know, but the conditions that we worked in, senior management were actually some of them even raised issues. But why do you do that? Why do you do that? But I had to stand for myself. But I think we need to improve on that as a government, that we have leaders who understand the trade. It will add much, much more value.
And leaders who are not afraid to tell
The truth, yes. Yes.
Is that right?
Yes,
You think so?
yes.
And who are not afraid to confront the truth when the moment requires so.
Yes,
You agree with that?
yes, I agree with that.
And if we had leaders who had confronted the truth here, within the health department, we might have saved lives. Is
Yes,
it not so?
I should have done more as a person.
Council.
Just a few questions to wrap up. Your training, sir, you refer to your training now. What training are you referring to?
By training, I'm a dental therapist.
Thank you. Just following up on this question that Justice Musuneke has just asked you, an opportunity for you to tell the truth and to make a difference was that day when the contempt application was before court in March 2016. Would you agree with me? You could have made a difference then.
But my position was already known by that time.
No, sir. Your position wasn't known by Section 27. It wasn't known by the other NGOs. You should have stood up there and said, don't agree with this. Don't take technical points in court. That's totally non-existent. Let's deal with the situation now. You didn't raise that. You didn't tell the judge he has problems. Isn't that so?
Yeah, I should have interacted more with Section 27. I didn't interact with them
Yes.
more.
Was there any criminal proceedings or disciplinary proceedings against you throughout this process?
Against me?
Yes.
Well, from the department? No, I was not.
No disciplinary proceedings. And any criminal proceedings, sir?
Against me?
Yes.
No.
Thank you, Justice Musuneke.
Thank you, Council, for a thorough examination. Thank you. It's time for tea. When we return, you're going to hear from at least three advocates. No, three. There's going to be Advocate Groenewald, followed by Advocate Nkuchana. And then the advocate who called you here will have a brief re-examination.
Okay.
It's what lawyers do.
Yes.
And then you'll have your closing statement.
Yes.
So that's what's going to happen immediately when we come back. We'll resume around 12 o'clock. And so you still have at least two more sets of advocates and your own advocate. We will adjourn until we'll adjourn until 12 o'clock.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold on. No, it's fine. They're moving us down. No guess, huh? Perfect. We have 4 minutes.
That side?
4 minutes.
Yeah. No guess, Marlena. You don't need anything.
postgraduate studies at VET. I did courses on governance and on policy. And also we did some crash course on project management. And when I was studying my master's, I also did a course on project management. And refresher courses also, I've done some refresher courses on project management. But what enabled me to do that is experience more than just courses, because courses are courses. I've been a senior manager for, especially under planning and strategic management for some time. Studying in the Northwest, I was a director of policy and planning, and I did very well. I came here, I was head of Chief Directorate Districtal Services, which was responsible for clinics and community-based services. I've worked as a regional chief director in Ekurhuleni and also in Tshwane, running the district, before I came back as a head of planning. And so I think the experience also enabled me. I have run some projects which I ran successful. So this one was huge. It was a huge project. It had sub-project in it. And it needed a lot of technical skills from different people. I could not do it alone. I had to have a team to assist me to do it. So basically, that's my take.
Your evidence in chief, sir, you indicated that you ran one project prior to be appointed to this specific project at the end of 2015.
Yes, I coordinated one project,
Okay.
assisted by a team of CEOs, CEOs of hospitals. That was the Selby Park one.
That's correct. So, according to you, am I correct to say that the MEC was aware of one project that you ran prior to appointing you?
Yes.
Yes. Now, sir, we had a testimony yesterday that there's only 2 other countries in the world that has this kind of system or project in place. It's a unique project. It's a unique system. As you well indicated, it's a huge project. Now, I would like to know what kind of research that you conduct and or studies that you undertake when you were appointed. So what did you do? What research did you do?
I did not do much research, but what I did was to assemble expertise in terms of people.
Through you, Justice,
Yes.
if I can just intervene on behalf of the witness.
Certainly.
The question is relating to the research conducted for the purposes of the project. The witness has already testified that at the time of his appointment on 5 November 2015, the project was already underway. So I do not understand the relevance of the question pertaining to research in respect of this witness.
Well,
About?
Justice, the relevance of the question is just quite simple. The witness testifies that this is a huge project, was a huge project. We had the evidence of the Ombudsman that says there's only 2 countries in the world that has done this. So all I want to know is what kind of extra measures that Mr. Mosenege, as the project manager, take to ensure that he runs this project sufficiently, properly, and according to the standards there might be? So I think the question is extremely relevant.
I think, Councillor, I'm going to allow the question in the light of the earlier responses of the witness. It was big, it was overwhelming, so Council wants to know, what work did you do, preparatory work, to be able to run the project? I think it's a relevant question, and the question will be allowed. As long as Council does not call him Moseneke, he comes very close to calling him. Our surnames are quite close.
Mosenege.
Moseneke and Mosenogi.
My apologies,
Sort of from the
Justice.
same tribal extraction. So be careful, Mosenogi and Moseneke. It's very close.
I will be careful.
Just
Thank
a
you,
bit different,
Justice.
Council.
Thank you very much, Justice.
Yeah, maybe in response to that, Council, is that I did look at what was already there in terms of the project, what was called the project plan, but also I did try to look at the work that I did, what influenced the project. So I looked, I only discovered that only cost analysis or a cost effectiveness study was done by our health economics, that is the Health Advance Institute. But there was no other document except the mental health policy that spoke of deinstitutionalization, which is is supposed to be a community-based approach to mental health, which is a new policy that needed to be implemented. But it was really a new policy, and it needed a lot of work to implement that. I also, because of my experience, realized that we did not, and I did sound it out when we spoke with other leadership, especially the HOD, and I think I did write something about that there was no, normally this kind of project, you must do proper due diligence so that you are able to see what is involved. But I didn't do much in terms of that, but I did sound out that there was no due diligence done. Because if due diligence was done, proper due diligence was done, we would have been able to identify the hiccups and the parameters, and even to have assisted us in terms of the length or the duration that needs, and even the cost of the project. So the project was weak in that respect.
Yes, sir. Just to summarize, you received this plan and you saw that there was no due diligence done, and the plan was lacking in a number of respects, but you were instructed to implement that plan. That was your instruction. Go and implement this.
In a way, yeah, I had to implement.
No, not in a way, sir. You were the project manager. And all I'm asking you is,
I was
instructed-
appointed to do that, yes.
Yes, you were appointed to do that. Now, sir, just briefly, I just want to find out, whose brainchild is this project?
As I said, that I came into the project that was already running. The idea, if I recall, but the idea of this cost-saving measure, it was part of the cost-saving measures.
I'm sorry, sir, I'm going to interrupt you there. I know, and I don't want to, duplicate the questions asked by my colleagues here. We know that there was cost-saving and so on. I want to know who sat there around the table And who said, well, this is going to be our project and this is going to be our plan? Because you weren't involved in that. So whose brainchild is this plan, was this plan?
I can't point to people, but I think it was an executive decision.
Okay, executive decision, and that will include?
The executive, DDG, the HOD and the MEC, and maybe the CFO.
MEC and?
The executive of the department,
Okay.
which included the DDGs and the HOD and the MEC.
You don't know who they consulted on the plan, the executive. You don't know whether or not they consulted external stakeholders, specialists, something like that.
I'm not sure of that, yes.
100%. Now, sir, I'm correct that Mrs. Mashlangu, the previous MEC, do I pronounce this correctly?
Yes.
She resigned a day before the Ombudsman's report became public, isn't it so?
That's what the Premier stated at the Ombudsman's launch of the report.
Okay. Now, you testified, sir, and you said that after this tragedy became public knowledge, you were a bit pushed to the side. And your words were there were problems between yourself and the executive. That was your words. Now, what was that problem, sir?
I think it arose in one of the meetings where, when I tackled the issue of banning that we need to finalize the extension of the contract. There were issues. I think banning requested a much more tariff because now they are going to only look at for children. So I was arguing that maybe we need to look at that and have finality in terms of the extension of the contract. Then the issue was that maybe I'm becoming a spokesperson for Life Esidimeni. And at that point I took the MEC on because that was not the case. I was just raising it for the sake of the children. So I did tackle the issue, confront the issue.
But
and at that time, I think it caused a lot of tension because I was a bit angry.
Sir, this is, I think it's time, the family want closure, but you can also get closure. So present us with the facts. Tell us, we want to know, sir, the MEC gave you an instruction to execute the project. The MEC resigned. We don't know, well, I don't know, where is the MEC? So we want to know, sir, what was your discussions between yourself and the MEC? What did the MEC say? Why do you say that there was difficulty between yourself and the MEC?
Yes, because he accused me of being a spokesperson. And then I had to retort and challenge that. And I think it created tensions. It was a very tense meeting. It was a very tense meeting, and it was me and her. And it was a very difficult meeting.
I'll say you say that when you were called to the Premier's office, the MEC didn't introduce yourself as the project manager. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, why didn't the MEC introduce you as the project manager?
I don't know. I didn't ask, but
Do you think
it was obvious that I'm no longer in, I don't know, in good books.
But do you think the MEC was trying to hide it? Something?
I'm not sure. Maybe she will be able to answer that.
Well, we don't know. She's not going to be called as a witness here by the government, so we don't know if we're going to get those answers, sir. But let's move on, sir. We note from the Ombudsman's report that there was a number of people that tried to interfere with this investigation. We note from the report and the recommendations by the Ombudsman that the number of your colleagues were identified, and it's specifically stated there by the Ombudsman that Dr. Manamela and Dr. Selubanu. He states there, which includes tampering with evidence. I want to know from you, sir. So the Ombudsman confirms that some of the witnesses and some of the department's employees tampered with evidence. And I want to know from you, sir, are you aware of any individual that tampered with evidence?
I was not aware until I read the report, but I wasn't aware that people were tampering with evidence.
So
I did present my evidence myself, yes.
you are the project manager, sir. I mean, at the end of the day, you had a big responsibility. And you say that according to you, nobody, you don't know of anybody that tampered with evidence.
Yes, I say I wasn't aware.
You wasn't aware.
It did not, nobody brought it to my notice.
Now, the Ombudsman further testified, and Professor said that his mandate was not to investigate any issues of fraud. But he said, well, he was made aware of and one issue where there was fronting by NGOs. You as the project manager, were you aware of any fraudulent activities?
The only one which maybe may classify as fraudulent, but there was a problem at Cullinan with the Seabadenga NGO, which came into Cullinan when it was supposed to be an NGO called Life Disciples. That one I was aware, and we did take the CEO responsible to task, and eventually she had to face disciplinary action.
In respect of,
Just before,
My
Council,
apologies.
you move on. What was happening at Cullinan, the Ombud talked about the fact that whilst Cullinan was meant to be a state mental health caregiver,
Yes.
it also had NGOs operating from Cullinan or something close to that. Can you explain to us what was happening there?
Judge, what happened in Cullinan is that Cullinan is a facility for intellectual disability. We're taking care of those kind of patients. So what happened is that there were facilities or space, wards that were not being used. And those wards were the ones that were part of the renovation project that were to renovate them so that we can get a space. So what has happened is that there was a division between the Cullinan where state patients are, and then those facilities were divided. And the plan that was was that maybe we can use that space to accommodate patients that are coming from Life Esidimeni. That's why there was renovation. So basically, that was the initial plan. That was there by the CEO of the then CEO of the hospital. But when the project came, we thought that we'll have to use that space because at least it will accommodate more people. That's how it came into the picture. And then the mental health unit under Dr. Manamela bought into that, and then the NGOs were offered that space to take care of patients. So there was facilities available, and there was a division between the hospital and those rooms. That's what happened, and that's how the NGOs came into the picture.
And were the NGOs funded directly by yourselves, or were they just an extension of Cullinan?
They undergone the same process with the way the other NGOs were, but the hospitals just made space available for them to work from there.
And you said it was Siabadinga and which other NGO?
The other one was Anchor Life. It came later, Anchor Life, yes.
Now, did they receive any patients from Life Esidimeni?
The way it worked there, if I'm correct, Judge, is that what happened, it was unique in Cullinan, that patients were discharged, bona fide patient from Cullinan were discharged into one NGO, and patients from Life were admitted in Cullinan. But I'm not very clear. I think Dr. Manamela will make it clear in terms of that. But basically, the issue was that originally it was supposed to be life care patients who were going to be looked after in that space. But it ended up being patients who were discharged.
You see, the Ombud, this is why this is relevant. The Ombud says the patients who otherwise were stable were discharged from Cullinan.
Yes.
To make space for patients who were placed, to use your language, from Life Esidimeni. And he says the consequence of that was that the patients who were displaced from Cullinan met their demise. They subsequently died.
Yes.
You know that?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Who ordered that the patients be discharged from Cullinan? How did that happen?
I'm not clear of the process, but I think from the CEO can answer that.
The CEO?
The then CEO can answer.
But wasn't this part of your project, overall project?
I think it just got assimilated into the project, but it was something that was original from my side. So I'm not clear what.
Who gave instructions that Cullinan should discharge these patients who ultimately met their death?
I think it was. I can't answer that, Justice, because it was not from the project side that it happened.
Counsel.
Thank you very much, Justice. So you say that it was not from the project side, but then you, in the same breath, you also say that Dr. Manamela, who was from
mental health unit.
From the mental health unit, and the mental health unit was part of the project.
It has always been mental health unit directorate.
Okay.
But it was a major part of the project because it had to do with patients.
So according to you now, do you say that the transfer or the discharge of the patients from CCRC to Siabadinga and Anchor was not part of this project?
It should have been, but it was assimilated into the project because it happened at the same time when the project was taking place.
So if you say it was assimilated into the project, it was then part of the project? Was it a project on its own?
No, what I'm saying is that it was not when the project took place, that process of discharging patient to Cullinan was under the ambit of the normal mental health directorate and the CEO of the hospital. But because then we were also responsible for the project, it happened during those times. So I'm not very clear how it happened, but I came into the picture when we had to deal with the problems that were there.
So as a project manager, you were only aware of the transfers from CCRC to Siabadinga and Anchor in June, July, when the patients were transferred and the problems started.
When the problems started with Siabadinga and also the issues were raised about that. So we had to sit down with I ended up having to sit with the leadership of the department and the CEO to understand what has happened. Why are there problems? What is this? What is this Siabadinga and all those things? And we tried to advise, but the advice was not taken, and then we had to take action. We had to recommend that the department take action. That's why the CEO was suspended and charged.
When did you sit down with the CEO of CCRC?
I don't have the exact date, but we did sit down with her.
What's July, August, September?
I don't think I have the correct date, unless if we have the date. But we did sit down with her before we took action against her, to try to understand what happened. I think Dr. Monemela will be able to answer that one.
So you see, we're in a very difficult situation here. We need to find closure for these families. And each and every time we have a witness here, that witness is not able to tell us what happened at the specific institutions. Now, you will agree with me that's frustrating for the families.
Yes.
And you will agree with me we'll never get closure if we cannot get to the facts.
Yes, but Council, I can't say I know if I don't know.
And that is 100%. So I don't want you to testify something that you know nothing about. But just to summarize then, you as a project manager, you only learned about Siabadinga, Anchor and CCRC's problems when the problems actually arose. So you weren't aware of the transfers, how the transfers should take place, who was responsible for the patients, the discharge of the patients, and so on. You weren't aware of that.
Because it was a normal function of the mental health directorate. That's why maybe I was in that way.
Okay.
Until the problems came. Then I became aware that there are problems. Patients are transferred from the hospital to the other side.
So are you saying to me, sir, you were not responsible for those transfers? It's Dr. Manamela that was responsible. That fell outside your instruction, the CCRC situation.
What I'm saying is that it was a normal mental health directorate function, especially that has to do with discharge of patient from Cullinan to that other side. I wasn't part of that.
Okay, so the Ombudsman made it quite clear that this project was part of the bigger project. He made it clear that live Esidimeni patients were transferred to CCRC. The patients that were at CCRC, in the Ombudsman's words, were sacrificed to go to the NGOs. So they were part of this program, sir. I put it to you, they were part of this program, and I put it to you that you were also responsible for them.
Maybe Mr. Groenewald, maybe the CEO can clarify it better than me.
100%, sir.
No,
Thank
but
you.
before we leave the matter, it's quite an important matter. You said you were part of the disciplinary processes against the CEO.
Yes.
What were the disciplinary processes against the CEO of CRC?
It was the issue of the recognition of this Siabadinga NGO that came in a normal routine, you know, because originally, Dr. Manamela, we were dealing with the NGO that originally came to the previous, when we were calling for bed, was Love Disciple. But we were surprised that then we were dealing with Siabadinga, and Siabadinga was not registered. We didn't know of its existence until when we were meeting with the CEO.
Ramsinoge, what I'm asking is, what charges did the CE of CRC face?
He did face the charges, the issue of Siabadinga, and also the issue of leasing Siabadinga the space to work in that facility.
But how did, what were the infractions? What were the wrong things that she or he had done?
I think the issue was that she was not given permission to do that.
To do what? To rent space?
To rent out space, but also the involvement of Siabadinga in the whole process, because we never knew the existence of Siabadinga until then.
Was Siabadinga ever given a service level agreement?
I'm not sure whether they were ever given service level agreement, because that was the bone of contention. That's why there was
Did Siabadinga receive any stipends?
Not to my knowledge, Judge.
Did Siabadinga receive any patients
They did receive patients.
who had formerly were at Kalinen or at Life Esidimeni?
Yes.
And she was charged for doing what? What was the wrong thing?
I don't have
I'm asking this only because we are told because of that arrangement, people died, ultimately. And Mr. Groenewald has a special interest in that particular situation. So I'd like to get back to the question, was this part of your project or not? And two, why did the CE act wrongly? In what sense did she act wrongly?
Judge, that's why we recommended that she be charged, because then it ended up being part of the project, because we wanted to place NGOs in that area. And that's how we had to take action against
So
them.
the answer is it was part of the project?
Eventually,
Yeah, and she acted wrongly
yes.
by allowing Siabadinga to rent wards that were not in use. But you don't know whether Siabadinga was one of your NGOs.
It was not until they came into the picture.
What do you mean came into the picture?
They came later in the picture. And they were not part of the initial meeting.
And how many?
The initial meeting, it was Love Disciple, which were part of that. And that's what we were supposed to deal with. But Love Disciple, in the end, turned out to be Siadinga took their place. I don't know. That's how we disciplined the manager, because it was a problem.
And were there problems with Anchor Life?
Anchor Life, the issue of Anchor Life came later because they were supposed to be accommodated at Kalafo. The facilities that were supposed to have been renovated at Kalafo, the nursing college site. But when myself and the DID technical people went to see Kalafo and see whether is it possible, we agreed that that's not the correct place to place patients. And then I think as an alternative, then they were accommodated at Kalinet because there were space available. So I think it was provided that they will share the space with Siabadinga.
Lastly, in your knowledge, how many people passed on under the care of Siabadinga? And how many under the care of Anchor Life?
I don't have the record here. I'll have to check.
But people did pass on, isn't it?
Yes, it was in the papers. It was in the papers, I remember clearly. And that's why it was a big problem for the department.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much, Thank you very much, Justice. So just a few more questions. So when you went to CCRC and had the meeting there with the CEO, you went there to CCRC.
The new one, the new CEO.
The old CEO. You said that you went there and you met with her.
No, I did not get it. She came, I was called to a meeting where she was meeting with myself and the DDG
So
in his office,
So
Dr. Libet. Yeah.
So in the period June 2016 till October 2016, did you ever go to CCRC and inspect and see what's going on there?
I did go.
When did you go there, sir?
I did go when the facilities were still being renovated, when we were taken round by the technical people, the technical people, to show us that they have finished with the renovation and showed us the facilities. I did visit, and I also did visit when there were problems. We had to go and see what's happening there.
When was that?
It was after the suspension of the CEO.
So that you...
When we took the new acting CEO and introduced him to the staff and to labor, and also we took her around to see the place.
So Siabadinga was closed down and those patients moved back to CCRC.
At that time they were still part of they were still there in those facilities when I went there.
Siabadinga was still there.
Yes.
Siabadinga was still there. Yes. Now, so we're gonna read evidence of family members that will come and testify of the conditions there. And will come and testify that the patients did not have blankets, that there was quite evident, clear that these patients did not have the necessary food, that they did not receive their medication, and at the end of the day, and as a consequence thereof, they died. So, in short, sir, they will testify that those facilities were not adequate, not nearly adequate, to house those patients. Did you observe that? Did you see that, sir, when you were there?
The facilities were, the infrastructure was okay, but the NGOs, I think they did not have resources, and it was leaky.
And what did you do about it, sir?
We did, there was an intervention team to try to arrest the situation. That was led by the practitioners, and we tried to address the situation. A lot of work was being done that side, but I was not on the ground to do that. But my team did the work, and I think Dr. Manamela can answer that.
But you cannot, give us specific information as to what your team did there, what intervention. Did they go and deliver food? If so, when did they do so? Did they go and deliver blankets? If so, when did they do so? Because we're going to testify that other NGOs came and provided food. Other NGOs came and provided blankets and clothing.
I know, but I can't be specific because I was not on the ground to do that. So I can't be specific.
And once again, sir, the purpose of these proceedings are to provide closure for the family members.
Yes.
And if we cannot provide them specifics, how would they get closure?
Council, I'm not able to be specific in everything, but there were people that we were working with. There were the district people, there were the project team, and I think other people will be able to give much more specifics.
Where's Dr. Manamela now?
She's under suspension, Justice.
Where is the HOD?
The HOD is also under suspension.
And we know the MEC has resigned.
Yes.
And you say no disciplinary proceedings have been instituted against you.
Yes, nothing has been, nobody has told me anything. Yes.
Who is left in that team?
It's me, who was the project head, and also there were most of the team members of mental health unit were mentioned by the ombudsman, and they have been, the process of discipline has been taken against them, and I think they were given written notices, if I'm right.
And you are on your normal post. You are still working.
I'm still the chief director, Plenty, yes.
Justice, the final question from my side. Unfortunately, I do not have copies of the document, but the witness referred to the nominees to serve on mental health project team for termination of contract, Life Esidimeni, and Justice, I will endeavor to see that we provide you with a copy of this document.
Yeah.
In that document, you set out all the individuals that, as part of the subcommittees, the members.
Yes.
All right. Now, the Ombudsman clearly indicated that there was a number of issues. There was infrastructure issues. There was transfer issues. issues is actually putting it lightly. And you say that of these committee members,
Yes.
the only action that's been taken is against the members of the mental health unit. Disciplinary action.
And the HOD and
HOD,
and
yes.
Dr. Manamela.
Dr. Manamela.
And then
But the
the
clinic,
other person was the chief director of Tshwane region was also mentioned, but he was precautionally transferred to Ekurunel. Yeah,
precautionary transfer.
yeah, and he subsequently appealed the recommendation, and I think he won the appeal.
You won the appeal.
Yes.
So the clinical specialists who were required to ensure performance of patient clinical audits or assessment, categorization of patients, monitoring, transfer, discharge of patients. Those 4 individuals, nothing has been done. No disciplinary action instituted against them.
They were not mentioned in the ombudsman's recommendations.
Well, sir, you are the project leader. You've read the Ombudsman's report.
Yes.
You saw that many of the findings that he made relates to their functions. So shouldn't they be held accountable?
After the ombudsman's report, I was no longer part of the project in terms of mental. Other people, other senior people were the ones who were deciding what to do. I was not involved.
You are the project, you were the project leader, sir.
Yes.
Yes. You are the person with the best knowledge of who should have done what. And after you studied the Ombudsman's report, don't you think it would have been just, fair, and proper responsibility from you to draw up a memorandum and say, I've read the Ombudsman's report. Here is all the individuals that took part, that were appointed, and were team members. And clearly, these individuals failed to do their work, and action should be taken against them.
I did not think of that.
The deputy project leader has been suspended, isn't it?
Yes.
Your deputy.
Yes.
Dr. Lebete, where is he or she?
It's still part of the department.
Has he been suspended?
No.
Has he been charged?
No. The only people who were charged justice were the people who were part of the recommendation of the ombudsman. Yes, other people were not mentioned there. So,
You see, you would have had counsel put that to you. The ombudsman cites areas of pitfalls
yes,
in the project. You're aware of that?
yes,
In other words, besides all the difficulties around the decision to implement, but comes the high point, the rush period between May and April, when you really decided, March and April, is it? When you really decided you're going to go ahead. He points out to problems around transport, around medical scripts and records, around accommodation, around crowding, around licensing, service level agreements, around stipends. Now I look at this document, which I'm seeing for the first time. There were subcommittees in relation to each of those things.
yes, yes,
Is that right?
yes.
And when you look at the Ombuds report, I think there's a point that Advocate Krunal is putting to you.
Yes.
There has been systemic failure on each of those levels. And all of them conspired to create death, ultimately. And nobody in the subcommittees has been held to account in any way, is that right?
Yes.
Do you know why it is so?
Justice, I think after the 1st of February, this year, there was a sense, there was a vacuum in terms of leadership because the MEC has resigned, the HOD was suspended subsequently, and there was, the morale of the department was very low. We didn't know what next, and the new leadership came into place, and we didn't come together. You know, maybe what should have happened is somebody should have called people together and looked at and assessed what has happened, but it seemed that it was an individual. Everybody had to look for himself, you know. And
Yeah, I mean, for instance, here you had 8 project officers. You know, now look at the subcommittees. You had 4 people who had to look after hospitals, and you had, I mean, every part of the project appeared to have had warm bodies. And many have titles like Doctor and Mr. and Miss and so on. And yet this project experiences a systemic failure.
yes,
In other words, at every level, as I put it to you. And you say none of these people have been held to account,
and none were,
except those at the top.
and
Your deputy and not yourself, as well as others.
yes, I don't know. Maybe people looked. The people looked at the recommendations and they took action in terms of what needed to be done. That's how I can explain it. But there was not even a debriefing for the people who remained behind. So it was a difficult period. It was
And
a
your
very, very
total
difficult
team
period.
had 21 state officials from the list you gave us.
It was a departmental team. Everybody in the department, one way or another, were involved in the project. I mean,
And do you know of any one of them who shouted murder to you, who shouted dissatisfaction and unhappiness with what they were called upon to implement?
the whole issue really devastated us, especially those who were closely involved in the department, who were closely involved with the project. We were very devastated. And sometimes we thought that maybe we were person non grata. It was difficult for us.
Let me put my last bee in my bonnet. I'm sure council will have others. You see, a state official, somebody employed as a public official, is obliged in law to implement only lawful orders. Do you know that?
Yes.
You would, with a master's degree in management, in public management, you would know. In other words, what I'm saying, putting to you, Mr. Musinogi, you have no duty to implement unlawful orders, whoever might give them. Do you know that?
Yes, I know that.
Let me give you a simple example. If I were to place dust before you, even with my authority as a judge, for instance, and I say, consume these drugs, are you obliged to consume them?
No,
You know you're not.
yes.
And if you're a public official and you're given orders that might lead to death of others, are you obliged to execute that order?
No, I'm not obliged.
And why did you in this instance? In this project, why did you?
As I said, I should have done more. I accept that I did. The best I did was not enough to avoid the deaths of people.
And you realize that you cannot be dismissed for refusing to execute an unlawful order.
Yes,
I can't order my clerk to jump through the window to his or her death, and she refuses, and I try and have her dismissed. The law won't allow me to do that. You realize that?
yes, I am aware, Justice.
And why did all these educated people with all these big titles form part of a project that had all the fingerprints of death?
I think in their own way they did raise issues. The clinicians did raise issues. I did raise issues. I can only explain it in answer that there was some kind of paralysis, especially looking at the number of people who were involved. I think we didn't anticipate that it will end the way it ended, horribly so.
You see, and I'm sure you know about that given the qualifications we know about you, public officials are employed and paid to serve and look after the people. That is plain, is it not?
Yes, we need to serve, especially the vulnerable and in the Department of Health, the patients.
It's your job to help patients to have access to all those things that the Constitution talks about. You know that.
Yes,
And you knew that all the time throughout this project.
yes.
And when somebody, your senior, suggests otherwise, you know plainly that you are not obliged to do so.
Yes.
Counsel?
Justice, I have no further questions. I'm satisfied.
Thank you ever so much.
Thank you very much, sir. I can only hope that you find peace and closure yourself.
Okay.
Sure. Advocate.
Thank you, Justice Musaneke. Mr. Musaneke, we have been questioned thoroughly throughout the day and for the better part of yesterday. I just want to clarify a few things with you. Firstly, there is one of the volumes in, that is a bundle of documents, volume 7. There are a number of licenses which were signed out under the name of the Director Mental Health Directorate, MJ Manamela. And only few, about, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, were signed by the HOD, Dr. Esidimeni. And all of these licenses were issued on the same day. That was on the 1st of April 2016. Did you notice that?
I did not notice that. I was not privy to those licenses, yes.
So you are not aware why they were issued on the same
On
day,
the
all of
same-
them?
Yes, I know. I wasn't aware.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why were some of these licenses signed for by Dr. Silibano and others by MJ Manamela?
I'm not sure why it happened because most of all the licenses on it has been part of the task of Dr. Manamela. So I'm not sure why the HOD did sign, except what I read from the Ombudsman's report.
In fact, they all ran from page on volume 7, page 2370 until 2415, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. No, it's not 15.
2416.
2416. Yes. What was the practice in the department for the issuing of these licenses? Who was supposed to sign them?
It is just in a way of answering. My assumption was that the practice was that the head of the mental health unit was the one signing.
But in terms of the legal requirements, who was supposed to sign them?
The HOD should have delegated.
Do we know whether there was such a delegation for the signing of all these licenses by Dr. Manamela?
I read from the ombudsman that there was no delegation, but can I explain the context?
Yes.
I think Gauteng Health Department has been very unstable in terms of management. We never had a lasting HOD, so I think systematically it caused failures because those things ended up just falling through the cracks. There was instability in terms of senior management. Head of department, after when I joined in 2006, we had different head of department until now. They were not lasting more than 2 years, 3 years. So I think it contributed to the system failure that we were speaking of.
So
that things just fell through the cracks, and I think we ended doing things that left much to be desired.
So it was within this confusion that remained all throughout that you ended with Dr. Manamela, who was not supposed to sign them, signing for these licenses. So it was a practice, assumed as a practice.
It was, what I say, I can only ascribe it to systems failure because if she was given or delegated powers to do that, she should have been given that powers. I assumed maybe in the past the head of mental health was given delegated powers to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, thank you. And for the issuing of these licenses en masse to the NGO, specifically those which are involved in the death of patients, do you know or are you privy to the criteria which was considered by Dr. Manamela?
To be able to say, I think what they did was there was a whole process. There's a whole process.
Yes.
That details what they need to do before finally they approve. There's a criteria. I think there's all the things. There's procedures. I'm not I can't be able to verbatim say what are the procedures, but the SLA has the procedures and who qualifies, who did what, yeah.
Okay. And in relation to, there's a bundle here referred to as bundle 8. And from the beginning of that bundle at 2718, there's a number of minutes of meetings. The first one, that is, it's dated 21 September 2015. And this predates your appointment as the project manager.
Yes.
And I'll take you to the first one where your name is recorded. It's on page 2727. 2727. And the date for that minute is 9 November 2015. Do you see that at the top?
Yes.
And there's welcome and opening meeting by Dr. M. Mazamisa.
Yes.
On the item project leader, it's recorded there under discussion. Mr. Masanoche is appointed by MEC as project manager for the Life Esidimeni project. Do you see that?
Yes.
Yes. Then further down there, under the column planning, there's a reference to, there's a whole discussions about NGO.
Yes.
The first point, bullet point, says NGOs need to create enough space to accommodate 2060 patients from LE. Do you see that?
Yes.
And which NGOs were contemplated or referred to there? And please do take note of the fact that the licenses were signed for after this date, that is 9 November 2015.
Yes.
Yeah. Which NGOs were contemplated? Yeah.
Council, I've stated before that we have partnership. The mental health unit
Yes.
has partnership with NGOs to take care of mentally and intellectually disabled people.
Yes.
Outside Life Esidimeni, they have been having clear contract with all these NGOs. They are funding them on an annual basis. So there are many NGOs outside the 27 that I mentioned. So they have that partnership and working relationship and inspections and all those things, that procedures. So I assume when it speaks of the existing NGOs.
Okay. Very well. Then further down, the third last bullet point says adjudication of NGOs need to be conducted. Do you see there? When was that conducted of these NGOs, and which of those NGOs are referred to there?
Adjudication of NGOs. It's the same NGOs that are existing.
Same NGOs
yeah.
that are existing.
Yes.
Then the last bullet point there, it says, Professor Gina mentioned that NGOs are not well equipped. And if patients relapse, they send them to hospital and refuse to take them back.
Councillor, where?
Same page.
Yes.
The last bullet point.
Yes.
Do you see that?
Yes.
How, to your knowledge, have this NGO, which it was noted that they are not well equipped, how did you go about in equipping them? And I understand that equipping them was to capacitate them so that they may be able to
to support them and to
To take
show
these
that, yeah.
patients
Yes.
who were part of this project? What steps were taken to equip them?
I will not know, but the mental health unit may clarify much more on
That
that.
is-
But there are people tasked in the mental health unit. There are people tasked to do that, to support the NGOs, and also in the districts. Each district have district mental health coordinators who also are tasked to support the NGOs.
Okay.
So I assume that that's part of the support that they needed to give.
Okay, thank you. Then let's move now to the next minute.
But before you move, Council, we know now, as a matter of fact, that the NGOs, at least 27 of them, were not properly equipped to do the job. Professor Greener says, be careful, NGOs are not properly equipped. A few months later, NGOs en masse are given licenses. And when I look at the licenses, the numbers are quite high of every NGO. Did you notice that?
Yes,
Where council started, in other words.
yes.
And I'm indebted to him for drawing my attention to that. Then I look at the licenses, the numbers are incredibly high. You look at each of these, even homes, they would have 50 people. For instance, in Rebafeni, on page 2390, can you see that? You look at page 2385, 150 people. At Calafong Heights, which you know you went there and didn't like what you saw. But move on to any of those pages, the numbers are
Very high, yeah.
quite high. Why is it so? Are you chasing 2,000 beds that you needed urgently?
Judge, some of the NGOs were existing NGOs. So they had previous arrangement with the department. So they needed we needed additional space to accommodate the life Esidimeni patients.
Anchor House on page 2385 was authorized to keep 150 people. And you told us earlier today that they did not have the accommodation.
Yes.
They had to go to Kalinin to ask for accommodation. But they had a license for 150 people. Can you see that?
Yes.
What do you say about that? And this is just random looking, but you go right through, you see quite. Look at page 2376, Dumelo Home. They're authorized to have 50 persons, 30 maybe children stay there and day care.
Yes. Judge, I see the numbers and I see the licenses. And I'm not able to answer. I think Dr. Manamela is the appropriate person to answer that.
Just to wrap it up, we know at least in one instance, she gave a license to an NGO that did not have the capacity to keep 150 people. Isn't it? You told us, so we know it's fact that it didn't, Anchor Life did not have that capacity.
They didn't have space, yeah.
Council, you may proceed.
Thank you, Justice Mseneke. And then to take the point further from in a different angle. The next minute, dated 23 November 2015, which starts on page 2729, and specifically draw your attention to the next page, 2730. Are you there?
Yes,
2730.
yes.
Yeah, then at the top there are different bullet points and so on. And there's the first paragraph. And let's go to the second paragraph. That is the second last bullet point there. It is noted there that communities cannot cater for psychiatric services, as pointed out by the families. And this would be one of the reports we have received from the families who complained about the moves from the LE, that is Life Esidimeni, into NGOs. Would that be correct?
Council, where are you?
2730.
Yes. Responses by the department.
Just above that.
Okay.
Do you see that?
Okay, yes.
Yes, it's communities cannot cater for psychiatric services, as pointed out by the families. Are you there?
Yes.
Yeah. And this is information which you will ordinarily have received from the families. Is that correct?
Okay.
And then it goes on. How are NGOs assisted by the department to render mental health services?
Yes. Yes.
So there was an acknowledgement, as at that time, on 23 November 2015, that these NGOs are not capable to render these services. And because they are not capable to render these services, they needed to be equipped or assisted. And this follows on what Professor Gina had indicated. I'm sorry. Do you see that? And my question again is, how has your department, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, Mr. Msenokhe. How did you go about in equipping this or assisting this NGO so that they are able to render these services?
As I said, there's an existing unit in the mental health directorate that deals with capacity and supporting the NGOs. And also the districts have mental health coordinators that continuously engage and visit the NGOs to support them.
But is there anywhere else where this has been recorded, that it has indeed been done?
I will not know here, but I know that there are existing support structures in the department.
Will that not form part of a requirement to accredit each of these institutions to provide these specific services?
Yes, because it's been done. There are people who are specific for each district to support the NGOs.
And before you would accredit somebody else, then there are certain processes that must be met. You go through training, you employ relevant people to render those services and so on. Were those the requirements which were considered by your unit?
By the Mental Health Directorate.
So where do you find that this has indeed been done, that these institutions or NGOs were equipped to receive these patients?
Maybe the appropriate people must be requested to come and give evidence.
That is
on
the Mental Health
Yes.
Directorate.
Yes.
Thank you. So, as part of that, further down on the pages, in relation to, we have been asked about Esidimeni, it also relates to this issue of NGOs and so on. And it's on page 2781. It is also a minute. Are you there?
Yes.
And in the minute, it seems to be, that is after introduction. Introduction were done by all. It's a minute dated 5 July 2016. And it stated, the chairperson indicated that MEC and various leadership visited the facility in the last week. There are problems with the NGO called Esidimeni. The Esidimeni NGO does not meet the criteria for the department to give the patients. Do you understand that?
Yes.
When was this realized that Esidimeni did not meet the criteria?
As I answered Councillor Groenewald, that we came to realize that there are problems in Cullinan. And one of the problems is that there was an NGO called Esidimeni that has come into the picture. And that was why disciplinary action was taken against the then CEO. It came into the picture at that time. And the purpose of this visit with the then chairperson of the visit, the head of the Dr. Mfenyan, was to introduce the new acting CEO and also to brief the staff in terms of what is happening. And that was the purpose of this meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
And finally, on this point, let me take you back to page 2765. Are you on the page?
Yes.
And this is another minute of a meeting dated 22/02/2016.
Yes.
And you'll recall that there was this debate way back the previous year. Professor Gina raised that issue.
Yes.
And it's recorded that the purpose of the meeting is to assess the readiness of the NGOs to take users from LE in terms of their capacity, like staff, actual beds, availability, and the space. Each NGO was asked to present to the team the status of
The
NGO.
Yes.
It is now common cause we do have that evidence that, for example, your anchor house did not have enough space despite being given a license to accommodate an X number of patients, and it had to ask for space somewhere else at the CCRC. Was that part of the assessment?
Council, you remember when I said from this meeting that I did also attend. I did notice that people are speaking of when they said 2,000 beds are available. They are not speaking of actual beds. They were beds that were envisaged to, when people have done renovations and so forth. So basically, that's why I discovered that. That's why I did write that note, because it revealed to me that we are not ready.
And in fact, on page 2767, it's stated clearly that Anchor House does not have. That Anchor House does not have the actual beds, 150.
Yeah.
And yet, as at the time, it had a license for that number of beds.
Yes.
And there are many, aren't they?
Yes.
Shalom has no beds. Shama has only 50 beds available. Tisetso, Malibe, House 1, House 2, no actual beds.
Yes.
You go through that whole list. Grace Halfway, no actual beds. Mayerton, vacant.
Precious Angels, no actual beds. Yes.
And several. Look at Takalani. 100 possible beds.
Yes.
And we know Takalani got a license, and we know people died there.
Yes.
Might they been sleeping on the floor?
Council, I think this meeting was to actually clarify where do we get beds, and that's why NGOs were asked to present and to look so that we are able to have information whether do we really have this beds. And that's how the issue of extension came about, because I realized that people were talking of 2,000 beds which are not existing.
And we know that licenses were issued after. Any more questions, Council? We need to move on. We need to go to lunch or continue?
We can go to lunch. I've got few, but we can go to lunch. It will depend on how he responds.
We have a few more questions.
Yes, okay.
And then we'll have re-examination immediately after. We've always have to anticipate what next we're going to do so we can keep our witnesses warm, right? They must have an idea when are they going to be called next. Which is our next witness, and is she available and ready?
And
Counsel for the state?
The next witness is indeed available and will be ready immediately after this witness.
And that will be the director of the National Department of Health.
Indeed, so, Ms. Matsoso.
Yes. Any council would like to raise a specific issue before we go to lunch? It's 1:30. I think we should come back at 2:30 to allow you at least an hour to get your act together for the next witness. I've been asked to make an announcement, but I think I'm going to ask Uba King, who heads my office, to come and make the announcement. But he asked me, and I think it normally should be the other way around. Would you want to come and say what you want to say, Uba King? It's in relation to how we file out and...
Good afternoon, everyone. Can we please allow the elders, the older members of the families, to go out first so that they should be served, and then the other people will follow after that? Thank you. Once judges left the venue, everybody else can, the old people or the older members of the older members will go and have some lunch, and then the other people will follow after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Baking. Excuse me, the complaint is that younger people rush out to the food and leave elderly people behind. So let's just show that decorum and just make sure that they get out first if they think they are elderly, and then followed by all of you. We'll resume at 2:30 and we are adjourned.
No, they'll only be. They'll only be.
Well, no, not me. I can't get it. I'm a teacher.